The Leominster City Council meeting is funded in part by DeCarolis Insurance Agency at www.decarolisinsuranceagency.com and by Avidia Bank at www.avidiabank.com.
Testing. Okay, it's 5:30, so I'm going to call the Finance Subcommittee meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Finance Subcommittee of the Leominster City Council. It is a committee of the whole meeting because we have a quorum of the entire council scheduled for September 25th at 5:30 p.m. And I'm going to read the notice of the whole meeting notice. This notice of a city council committee of the whole meeting is posted in the event that a quorum of city councilors is present at this standing committee meeting. If less than a quorum of the city council is present, no committee of the whole meeting shall take place. If a quorum is present, any such meeting shall be restricted to the standing committee agenda items listed above. And that is the case because we do have a quorum, and we have one item on our agenda this evening. That's 3-24. Claire Frieda, Councilor at Large, prohibit the City of Leominster from retaining any equity remaining on a taxpayer's property after all municipal tax liability, incurred fees and charges have been satisfied after a foreclosure auction. If a property is sold after the city's liability has been met, all equity shall be returned to the property owner. Also, the city shall not engage with any third party that would participate in the practice of equity theft. This was given regular course on 8/14/2023. There's been further time until this evening on our regular agenda later on, and it is the subject of this subcommittee meeting. With me in the subcommittee is Councilor Angelini, the Ward 5 Councilor, and Councilor Pauline Cormier, the third member of the Finance Subcommittee. We did ask for an opinion from Brian Riley, our city solicitor, on this. And I think I'm going to start by reading that into the record. This opinion is dated today's date. Good afternoon. In my opinion, there is no authority at this time, in parentheses, see below, for such excess funds after the sale of a tax title to be paid directly to the former owner. Moreover, it is uncertain whether such a payment would run afoul of the so-called anti-aid amendment by making a payment to a private individual or other entity that is not provided for in the general laws. The treasurer collector must follow the provisions of general laws, in this case, Chapter 60, Section 77B, and they do not, I think there's a piece of that missing. That being said, Section 77B and/or other relevant statutes are very likely to be revised in the near future to address this specific issue. Councilor Frieda's requested vote is likely in response to a recent May 2023 U.S. Supreme Court decision in Tyler versus Hennepin County, The Tyler case reviewed a Minnesota statute similar to that in Massachusetts, in which the county could retain all proceeds from a foreclosure sale, even where the sale proceeds exceeded what the former tax lien was. Excess funds, which clearly suggests a similar legal problem for General Laws, Chapter 60, Section 77B. It is my understanding that the General Court plans to address this issue in order to avoid similar court proceedings. In addition, I note the attached bulletin from DOR's Division of Local Services. This advisory notes that while typically there is no authority for a treasurer collector to hold such excess funds in escrow, DLS will not object to holding such funds aside until there is a future direction from a statutes before the court, any court decision on the subject. In my opinion, while the proposed council vote is not illegal or improper, it would not compel the treasurer collector to act in a manner not provided for in the new procedure from either the courts or the general court. There is also the DLS bulletin that Councilor Riley is referring to, has also been provided to us, both in the opinion as well as by our former treasurer, Mr. LaPlante. It's dated August 23. United States Supreme Court recently decided in the case of Tyler versus Hennepin County. In that case, the court considered the constitutionality of a county retaining surplus proceeds that resulted from the sale of foreclosed property due to the failure of the property owner to pay their local taxes. In finding in favor of the taxpayer, the decision sparked uncertainty related to comparable foreclosure practices in Massachusetts. As a result, the Division of Local Services has received questions from municipalities about whether or not they should retain any such proceeds in an agency account, pending further instruction from the courts as to whether these funds will need to be returned to property owners or not. An agency fund is one of 4 types of fiduciary funds. It is used to report resources in a purely custodial capacity by a governmental unit. Agency funds generally involve only the receipt, temporary investment, and periodic transfer of money to fulfill legal obligations to individuals, private organizations, or other governments. For example, certain employee payroll withholdings typically accumulate in an agency fund until due and forwarded to the federal government, healthcare provider, and so forth. Presently, there is no reservation of surplus proceeds from the sale of property as a tax possession after the community has acquired title through foreclosure. Not only is there no language in General Laws, Chapter 60, Section 77B, or any other provision of Chapter 60 requiring the reservation of surplus from a sale of tax possession property, but General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53 establishes a default rule making municipal receipts a general fund revenue that may only be spent by appropriation. And General Law, Chapter 59, Section 23 provides that the balance of available funds certified by the Director of Accounts as of July 1st, free cash, is increased by the proceeds from the sale of tax possession property. For more information on journal entries associated with this process, please contact your Bureau of Accounts representative. However, if there were a case that surplus proceeds did need to be returned to property owners, communities would undoubtedly hold such funds in an agency account until such time that they could be returned. Given this, and the uncertainty as to whether or not surplus proceeds will need to be returned in all cases to property owners, DSL will not object to a community temporarily holding any such surplus proceeds in an agency account until there is a directive from the courts on this matter. Municipal treasurers should consult with their local council, chief executive officers, and finance teams before deciding to do so. Okay, this evening we do have our finance team with us. Former Treasurer David LaPlante, our Treasurer our Comptroller Jen Runnington, and our current Treasurer Collector Nicole LaPlante. Do you want to join us at the table and the microphone there? Yes.
been to allow the petitioner to speak before we get into all the reasons why not?
I'm going to ask the, not that I've done it, but I'm going to ask the former treasurer who's most knowledgeable about this to give us some background first.
Well, I would think you would respond to the petition once I describe the petition, but all right. Everything go backwards.
Mr. Plan, I know you have been involved in this in the past, and you've provided us with a letter previously, a report on this. Do you want to give us some background on what the practice of the city of Leominster has been with respect to these tax title properties?
Sure, that's not a problem. First of all, I want to tell you that I can certify to you for the last 50 years, my knowing the treasurers for the last 50 of which I was 30 of those, the city of Leominster has never sold a tax lien to anyone. The only thing we've ever done is foreclosed. So past practice would indicate that that's going to be how it's going to be working in the future. So we've never had that practice because we understood back then when the law happened to really start taking force. I spoke with Dean Mazzarella and said, what do you think? And we both said the same thing. I don't think so, because it just allows people, unscrupulous people, to get a hold of these things and just, kill the person and take everything away from them in a very bad manner. So we've never done that. So I just wanted to make that clear that that's never happened. And so I thought maybe what would be good to do would be to explain the process real quickly as to what we've done over the past 30 years with tax collection and finally up to foreclosure. So as you know, we bill quarterly real estate taxes. So we'll start with a new year. First payments due in August, and then November, and then February, and then May. In May, when the person hasn't paid the bill, we now by law have to send them a demand saying, hey, you didn't pay it, you owe us the demand, pay the bill. After that, we can begin the process of putting a lien on the property so that we don't lose our right to the tax. And that has to be done within a certain period of time, which I believe is 3 years from the assessment date of the tax, not the issuance of the bill, but from when they first do the assessment of that tax on January 1st. So we have 3 years to do that, or we could lose our ability to go after the money, which is why we do it. So what the city of Leominster does after that is sometime starting in July, we send out a letter saying, we're reviewing this, you didn't pay it, please pay it, because we're going to have to do something else, put a lien on your property. And that's the nice letter. And then probably in September, we send the second one, which isn't so nice. They said, well, you didn't do anything. We know you own this property, and we're telling you that on this date, we're going to advertise your name, and we're going to put a lien on your property. And then we finally do that and send them a letter that says, hey, we did advertise it, here you go. And on this date, there'll be a lien. So at this point, we don't own the property. There's just a lien, like any person would owe somebody of mine, they put a builder's lien or something on a property. We have that taken care of so that we don't lose our ability. Now, law states that after 6 months, now we can start the foreclosure procedure. The city of Leominster, in my time there and before, has been very, very slow at trying to recover those taxes because we have people who have even bigger amounts too. So we try to go after the old ones first. And over all the years that I can tell you, we've been very relaxed at trying to force people to pay. But we have to follow the law. And of course, the city needs the money to run the city. So what we would do then is at some point in time, and I can't give you an exact date because it varies, but probably years, many years later, and thousands of dollars later owed, we would actually then send the document to the land court to go through that procedure, which at minimum is a year and is very encumbersome, and it causes the land court causes the person to be known and to actually come there and tell them why they haven't paid. So it's not, we just can't snatch the property from anybody. It is a long process and it's very costly. So we obviously can't do everybody all at once because we don't have enough money to do that. So we pick and choose them as we go along the trail. And then what we do in between there, if a person comes in and says, hey, I got this notice, what can I do? Then we sit down with them about making a payment agreement. And we're very liberal about how we do this. You can pay it over many years or whatever you want to do. And as long as you keep your current tax bill paid, and we just made an agreement today. We just happen to have one today. And so that works. And then if they don't pay that, then we say, okay, if you don't pay that, now we're going to really go after you. If you don't pay this, that's one side. The other side is the people who don't respond. They don't want to know. And I can tell you, in my time as treasurer, in my 30 years, I had many foreclosures and many tax sales. And the last one I did before I retired, we actually made some proceeds. Now that's over 30 years. And why was that? Well, because the prices of the properties went through the ceiling. So people was realizing now, well, my property that I paid 100,000 is worth 350. So that's why we got some proceeds on the last two sales, the one that I did and the one that the previous treasurer, Paul Redmond, did. We actually made some proceeds.
Go ahead.
So a tax sale, is that when the homeowner sells the home and the city ends up receiving its taxes, or do you get some of the revenue from the sale of the home, from the sale of the property?
The tax sale is when the city does it,
Oh, I see.
not
Okay.
the homeowner.
Got it. Okay.
It's us doing it.
Okay.
And that's where I was going to go in this process we're talking about is we will actually sit down with a person and try to get them financing. Who does that? We try to find them somebody that we know who will look at them and say, well, we'll try to give you money. Unfortunately, the way the laws are now in the banks, if you have tax liens on your property, they don't want to loan you money. So they don't really help. We try reverse mortgages. We just try everything. Do you have a relative who can get a loan for you and sign for? We just try to talk to everybody. And when that fails and nothing else can happen, that's when we foreclose. So we've gone from A to Z, staying on our heads because we don't want to own the property. We actually ask the people, why don't you sell it yourself? Don't let us sell it because we're going to keep the money. Why don't you sell it? We've had luck with that. We've actually had homeowners who've sold their property, and these are usually older homeowners, and their families get involved, and then they realize what's going on, and they don't or can't help them pay the taxes off. So they help them sell the house, and they keep the proceeds, which works well. So we've gone through this whole process. When we get no response, which happens a lot, when families of deceased taxpayers who owe a lot of money see what's owed, they just go, they can't run away fast enough. They just don't want to know that they're going to have to pay all that off. That's changing now with the fact that properties are worth more.
David, do we have any in the pipeline right now that are likely to result in surplus proceeds?
We have foreclosed on a few more properties since Paul's last sale, but there are none right now that are even close to being put up for a foreclosure sale.
And if that event occurred, based on Attorney Riley's opinion in the DLS bulletin, would it be the policy of your office or the treasurer's office to set up one of those agency accounts?
Yes, yes. I mean, because we can see, the writing's on the wall, what's going to happen here, I believe, from that Supreme Court case. So we don't want to follow that. So we would definitely, I spoke with Nicole and with Jen, we would set up an agency account to put any proceeds in so that when that final ruling does happen, we'll have the money there to disperse back to the person or persons that we foreclosed on. So that would be what we would be doing moving forward.
And I would assume there's no move afoot or any thought or intention to change 50 years of practice and start selling these tax titles to third parties?
No, definitely not. We've already had that major discussion. We don't want to go there because believe it or not, I don't know if you know this, but even when we sell those tax titles to another party, you're selling up to a certain point in time. Now, from that point forward, if that bill doesn't get paid, now you can sell that one. So you could actually have 2 or 3 or 4 different people owning parts of this tax lien. So it's really kind of a crazy thing that we have to keep track of. The paperwork is phenomenal. And I can't see why we would even want to do it. Never mind the fact that it's going to hurt the taxpayer, but for us to keep track of it's enormous.
Councilor Angelini, do you have a question?
Yeah. Chairman. Yeah. Were you ever involved in a situation where on the sale of the property was still a deficiency, taxes owed with some penalty?
A deficiency as far as what we sold it for was less than taxes owed?
Correct.
90% of the time. 90% of the time.
That's,
Yeah.
That's rather alarming.
Yes.
And so could you just briefly sort of outline costs associated with that foreclosure process? Obviously, with legal fees and
Right.
service fees.
Right. It's we were looking at this and when this law changed and we're going to really have to change the way the city captures the total dollars spent on a tax title, where I can, and Nicole could probably, and Jen could tell you what we've spent with the lawyers. What we don't know, the intrinsic costs of what, well, when the DPW plowed it out, the forestry department chopped some trees down. We had to hire somebody else to fix the roof. Then we had to have an inspector come in and do X, Y, Z. Then we had to we have to, when we foreclose, we have to maintain the property. And sometimes it's hard to capture all of those items because they happen within departments and then, you forget about it and then you've lost, a cost center of something that you should charge back to that property. Well, when this came out, we said, we've got to make sure that we can trace all of the costs now because it would appear that eventually this is going to happen. We're going to have to give the money back. And so we better make sure the city's covered for everything that all of our taxes, interest charges, fees, you name it, we want to be covered. So that's some of the stuff involved with trying to foreclose on a property and the costs.
Beautiful answer, very informative.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Councilor Cormier, any questions?
The argument that I've heard is in the situation where you have a property owner that just has no intention of it's usually a multi-unit or a multi-family unit that has no intention of paying the city taxes. So they're just going to keep the property, collect the rents, keep putting that money in their pockets. And then eventually when the city steps in and says, okay, we're done, they just turn away and walk away from it and they leave it to the city.
Exactly.
So when I was looking at this, that was one of the first things I thought. I said, well, you're going to have some people that are going to abuse this as well. They're going to keep this money in their pocket. They're going to disappear. And then if there happens to be any profit on it at the sale, which is unlikely, and thank you. I mean, I didn't realize it was 90% of a loss most of the time.
Yeah.
But in the event that there was a surplus, it seems to me that these people who had no intention of ever paying their taxes, were just looking to take off, are now going to have a windfall because the value of it has increased so much with the city taking care of it, maintaining it. Like you said, a roof, trees, anything like that. Well, now the value's gone up. So these people that had intended to just leave the city at a loss are now looking at a windfall afterwards.
I agree, and I can state about several different instances. One was a group of condos, 3 condos owned by a divorced husband and wife down off of Central Street, and promises over 7 or 10 years to pay it and to give me a little bit of money and then run away. And then, I'm going to pay it next. Give me some more time. Go to land court. Tell them, I'm going to pay it. And of course, the land court, they're very lenient. Well, give them more time. And then when all is said and done, all those 8 and 10 years, they kept the money and then they just walked away. As soon as I foreclosed, they could care less. They walked right away. And I was stuck with, I had cleaning bills and you name it. It was a condo. At least I'd have to fix the roof. But that was exactly what happened. But that was when the prices of these places was not what it is now. So I would tell you that the 90% I told you about was up to about a year or 2 ago. But now I would expect if the properties are maintained, and that's another iffy thing, the property should be worth more than the taxes that are should be, and we're starting to try to catch up a little bit so we're not so letting hundreds of thousands of dollars accrue on properties so that we get behind the 8 ball. So it's going to be wait to be seen how landlords start to react, especially those who are own the property, they don't live there, and they're renting the properties. And It's going to be interesting to see what happens now that the properties are worth more. Will they wait longer and keep the money and then run? Or will they say, okay, I'll sell the property now and make money, so we'll pay it off? It will be an interesting thing to see.
Is that Council? Council Frida?
David, you and I have had this conversation well over a year ago. When I first became concerned about this. I've been following it about a year. And it was hard to believe with a lot of people that this could actually be done in any community. I have a number, because of being in the real estate business, I have a number of friends that are bankers. And we actually had discussions because they didn't believe it was possible for a community to take excess funding, because banks can't do it. They foreclose. Any equity left over, that money goes back to the owner of the property, and at least allow them to start over. First thing I told you when we first spoke was that I had never had a concern about the city of Leominster right now with you, with this council, with the mayor, or anybody else in the city that would even think of doing this to one of our citizens. But when you retired, we had another treasurer in there for a year. Now we have Nicole. And we're not going to be here forever. And a Supreme Court ruling was in that community. There are 13 states that allow keeping excess funds. And they're sold to third party. Tillage Davis is one of the worst companies. And they're under scrutiny now with the government. But they bundle. And we're lucky. And let me just ask you for an example, because one of the latest that really sparked me to put this petition in was the Worcester woman, and I'm sure you're familiar with her,
Yeah.
who bought her house in 1976, sold it in paid it off in 1996, worked at TJ Maxx, then got sick and lived alone, had $2,800, I think it was, and her house was valued at $291,000. And she found out that she was homeless because they foreclosed the taxes and took over $250,000 in equity from her.
Right.
Now, would you think, coming from Worcester, that Worcester would ever do that to anybody?
The truth? Yes.
You do.
Because that's how,
That's a bad
that's-
commentary.
that's basically how, they're interested in getting the tax receivable dollars in and out the door. And then it's like, I don't see it anymore. It's not my problem. I did
Right.
good. I got the money for the city,
Right.
and now we can keep going. But, with us, what we're thinking is, well, wait a minute, you can't do that. I mean, besides it's inhumane, it doesn't make any sense at all to be treating your taxpayers that way. If anything's going to happen, we'll do it so we can keep track of it. And so, yes, I heard that whole story. And honestly, Leominster never would have done that
Right.
because for the money she owed, I would have made an agreement with her in a second. Even if she was only giving me $100 a month,
But I
because
think
you
they-
owed so
they-
little.
that's how
But
Tillage makes
exactly, when
money.
you sell them, you have no choice. You have to sell in bundles. So like property, so if it's, for example, if it's two deckers, two families, all two families under that code have to be offered that have tax liens. You can't pick and choose. So it's everyone. And we said, what? This is just not good.
You getting extra money into their coffers. Municipality want all the money that they can get,
Exactly.
any way they can get.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That's the municipality.
A
I-
lot do
I'm
it.
involved with the MMA long enough. They're against, I mean, they support, the ability to do this if necessary. But when it gets closer to home, I mean, Massachusetts has had 315 homes throughout the state that have been taken, a total of $48 million in people's equity that has been stolen.
Yep.
I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, the statistics, the average is 82% of equity, $172,000 a house. That's a lot of money
Mhm.
that people have worked their whole lives for. And 65% of the homes were forcibly seized for tax debt, less than the price of a 6-year-old Honda Accord. Just to put a relationship to it.
Yeah.
One investor collected $15 million more than the tax debt owed, more than enough to pay full tuition of every student from Massachusetts attending Harvard. These aren't just blown out of proportion statistics. We're one of 13 states that allow the municipalities to do this. And there are a lot of municipalities that are doing it. Bolton, you know, I mean, that was another story that was almost nationwide. You know, a $310,000 profit on a poor gentleman that had an alpaca farm.
Mm.
He owed $60,000 in taxes. I think the way the question was posed to Attorney Riley, do we have the authority, City Council have the authority to direct? I'm not looking to direct you. I'm looking to put notice that Leominster, if we're not doing it, then there's no harm in having this prohibiting it. We're sending a message to our community. We wouldn't do that to them. And we're waiting for, is it Senator Montigny and Representative Roy and Representative Vitolo that have put bills in to get Massachusetts out of those 13. This can still be done, even though it's a Supreme Court ruling. I mean,
Yes.
that's only one state that is
Right,
affected. If you
right.
live in Massachusetts, tough luck on what the ruling was there.
Yep.
We need to do it here. Otherwise, it's up to the land court judges to make the decision. I'm concerned about when you're not here, Nicole's not here, we're not here, Dee Mazzarella's not here. Who knows what anybody can do, you know, that might come in after us. If the state has it, we know how quickly the legislature acts. And may not be done for a while.
Mm.
So this, I don't see any harm in this city, in this council supporting something that would tell our taxpayers, we wouldn't do that to you, basically is what we're saying. And I don't think we would. If we needed a lot of money tomorrow though, and all of a sudden with the economy the way it is, and you have a, you know, 20, 30, 40 houses that you want to foreclose on, or you can foreclose on, there's a real temptation there for somebody, if you're not there and Nicole's not there, you know, to bundle that and say, well, I'm not going to deal with this. I'm not going to go through the process. I'm going to just bundle these up, put them all together and give this package to Tillage. They're going to pay us what's owed to us, plus all the attorney fees and everything else. And they run away with the equity on somebody's property of citizens that have lived in this city for all those years. It's just, I don't want to make this controversial because I'm not, and you know, we've been together 30 years.
Yep.
You know how I feel about you and how you do your job. But you retired last year and Nicole's there now, but we had somebody in between that had differences of opinion than most of us had.
Mhm.
You know that, we know that. It's not public knowledge. But we do know that there was a different mindset
Yep.
in that office. And that can happen in a number of different places at the same time. So, you know, I feel so strongly about this because it's just so unfair to even think that we could keep somebody's money on that they've earned for the past 20, 30 years. And most of the time, everything that you read, the Sentinel just had an article a week and a half ago, an editorial,
Yeah.
you know, against it. The Telegram had one. They're all over saying that this shouldn't be done. Massachusetts has changed their ruling. So why would we not, as a city, as a community, tell people we're not going to do this to you, and you're not doing it anyway. So supporting something like this isn't going to hurt what you do. Unless we fall into 50, 60, 70 houses and then we have a negative free cash like we had 30 years ago when we both started.
Yep.
And all of a sudden it's an opportunity to get some money in here to help pay the bills. We want to do it on somebody else's back? I don't think so. So, you know, I understand. I'm not looking, and the question that was posed to Brian Riley was specifically, does the city council have the authority to direct how and in what manner the treasurer collect tax titles and sell the same to third parties? That wasn't exactly what I would have asked Brian Riley. His answer is probably close to the same.
Mhm.
But he does leave room in there that it's not illegal and it's not improper to support something like this. So, you know, I appreciate what you do. I appreciate what Jen does. I appreciate what Nicole's doing. And I'm thankful that we have you people in that office. But I want to protect in case something happens when you're gone and Nicole's here and somebody else might come in. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And I want to see our citizens protected, not have to worry in that kind of a situation.
Mm.
That was my point. My point of putting in it was absolutely nothing against anybody who's working here now. It's what I've watched for over a year, what I've been involved in, what I've listened to, and what I've heard in the other communities that I've worked in, and I worked in.
Right.
So, you know, I just want to thank you for that. And,
No, no problem.
you know, I think you see my point. I think we
Yep.
talked about
Oh,
it.
yes.
And I know I've got people to you
Yep.
that have been in tax trouble, that didn't know, have a way to turn. And we've sat and you've worked it out and, you know, they paid over a 2, 3, 5-year period to get out of the problem. And I fully understand that. And I'm proud to say that you do that. But I see no harm in that extra step of protection for our citizens in the community.
Mm. I can, go ahead, Jen.
Do you want to prohibit the sale in tax sales to the third parties or say the prohibit revenue in general coming in from any sale?
Probably both, but the most concern, and I don't think we've really, maybe 30 years ago, 20 years ago we did. But I don't think you let it go that far to get to a point where you would have to bundle. And I think that's the only time until a Davis company would be interested in accessing any of those is when you have a good number.
Yeah, we wouldn't do the third party, as David said, we don't, that's just not.
We don't do
The petition speaks for both. It does speak, the petition as it's currently drafted speaks to both, prohibiting both practices, but the opinion from Brian Riley only answered one.
Because the Mass General Law right now, as it stands, does say that any proceeds are general fund revenue. So having a petition that prohibits that.
It's not enforceable. It's not enforceable. Unfortunately, the way the current statutes are set up in Massachusetts, if we pass this petition the way it's drafted, it's not enforceable. So, I mean, what we're obviously asking you to do, all of us, I would imagine, ultimately, is don't do it. You've never done it with respect to selling. You have done it with respect to keeping proceeds, but in limited cases. I mean, we're all probably very hopeful that the legislature will get this straightened out in short order. So then we will be able to be in a coordinated way. That's why I asked the city solicitor the way I asked him, was I want to know what authority we have. And really what he's suggesting is that he's saying, look, there's probably no harm, he's trying to say, by us passing this, but it's not going to be enforceable. It runs afoul of the general law.
Do you put it in the?
Well, because DLS is looking the other way, right? DLS is winking and looking the other way for them for now.
Yeah, so we, you know, I have to tell you, you know, after doing this for 30 years, the threat of us taking everything has gotten them to be able to find a way to get those taxes paid. It's a wonderful tool. I understand that, you know, on the other side of that, they're going to lose their money, but I have to tell you, in most of the cases where we foreclosed on people and made some money, which isn't very much, these were people who didn't live in the properties were abandoned, the properties were not in good condition. They weren't Joe and Joan, general taxpayer, trying really hard, saying, please help me not lose this. That was not the case. It was the opposite, where we got no response, no help. They just didn't want to do anything. And then they just walked away. So I like that part, that we can actually say, well, if you don't do it, we're going to take the money. And then we say, okay, why don't you sell it? Why don't you sell it? And then you keep the money and just pay the taxes off. And they don't want to do that either. So it's a hard thing.
Did sell, don't track every single thing. We it did make a small profit, but at the end of the day.
Yeah, he probably
Maybe.
was. Yeah. So I think I have no problem with let's not bundle them because we don't do it anyway. But the other part of it in my collecting side, I wish would stay there, that we could take the money because it really helped get the taxes paid. And it flushed out those people who would just, I don't want to call them, but jerks and wouldn't do anything. You could just bend over back and they could care less. So you know what? Good. Give me your money. You don't deserve it. But that's just my opinion. But like I said, the first part of this, I think, is fine with the no bundling.
So let me ask you, let me ask you if you had a situation like they had in Worcester with this woman who got sick.
Yep.
And was by herself and had no alternative. And she owes $6,000 in taxes. And she goes to you for help. Now, Worcester, I understand, I don't know what the history of it was, whether she tried to talk with the assessor, I don't know, or the collector, or what she tried to do.
Yeah.
But if someone came to you with that situation and they had no way of paying anything in the immediate future, what would you do with that?
We would put that on hold. We have, because to us, it's $6,000 versus the people who owe $300,000 and $400,000 that we're going after first. So I have to say, I don't think we've ever foreclosed on anybody that's owed that amount of money. That's not a little, I guess, but it's little in compared to others. Unless it was like a piece of property that was just abandoned and but for people who were living in the property, we just, like I said, we bend over backwards in this office and Nicole is doing the same thing. We would let it ride. We would try to, we would first of all, wouldn't be in the same situation as that because I guarantee you they sold that in a bundle. They must have sold it,
Forcing somebody to sell. I know that's the answer to everything.
Yep.
If you owe $3,000, you can't pay it.
Yep.
Sell it and pay the bill and move, but that's not what everybody.
No, if someone's in the situation you just said, I mean, it would make only common sense to try to work with them. I mean, if I could only get $100 a month out of them or whatever, just to show something is happening, because that's what the land court wants to see, that you're trying your best, you're doing something, and they're going to side with the person way before we would. The land court's very low. So they're going to make sure that this person's given every opportunity.
That $6,000 thing, David, that could never happen in Leominster.
No, I would tell you,
because we wouldn't spend the money to collect the $6,000.
Yeah.
We take the investment at, what is it, 14% of the default rate? It'd be an investment, it'd be a $6,000 CD for us, right? Versus spending all that money on legal fees to try to foreclose it. We would never do that.
yeah, it would take a long time and it would be very, very cost prohibitive to do something with that. And like I'm saying, would have to believe, because of what we read in the paper on that Worcester one, that it was a private party, with their fangs out going, wham, $6,000. This is great. I'm going to pull that right away from her and I'm going to make a million. I can see how that happens.
So that was the third party.
Yeah. And see, that would not happen in Leominster. It wouldn't happen. I guarantee it wouldn't happen.
Okay, any other councilors have questions? Councilor Shelf was up.
Yeah, I do. Thank you. Is this on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record, I'm reading Brian Riley's opinion, and he says, in my opinion, while the proposed council vote is not illegal or improper, it also would not compel the treasurer collector to act in a manner not provided for in the general laws. So that says to me that it would be enforceable.
Correct.
The way that it's written. It's good. So,
I'm sorry, you said unenforceable?
no, it would be enforceable. It's not.
No, it's not enforceable. It's absolutely.
Brian Riley says it is. Brian Riley says it would not.
That's
compel
your
the
reading of
treasurer
Brian
collector-
Riley's opinion. David,
Yeah,
Do
I'm
we have-
reading it verbatim.
David, what is your obligation under the general laws right now with respect to this? I mean, do you have the right or responsibility until this DLS memo came out? That's general fund revenue, right?
Yes, correct. I have no choice. Yeah. So if it happened right now, no matter, I guess what he's saying, if a resolution passed or whatever, I would still, until it changed, have to follow what the DOR and DLS regulations were, which would be, at this point, they would say, we would not mind if you put it in a holding account.
Right.
I would still do what they said.
And the petition does not address what you do with it.
It says it would not compel it said it wouldn't be illegal or improper. It also would not compel the treasurer or collector to act in a manner not provided for in the law,
That's
which is the state statute, not our law, the state statute,
right. So the
which means it
petition-
would be unenforceable. That's what that means. That's the plain meaning of those words.
I don't agree.
Well, you don't have to agree. That's what it
I'm
means.
not going to argue with you either,
You don't have to.
because I'll just read the city solicitor's opinion as he sent it. So my question's for you, David. In terms of tax bills, right? I mean, a $6,000 tax bill is relatively minor, right? And you used another example of $300,000 or $400,000. I mean, how long does it take to rack up that kind of a tax bill? 400
How long does it take to what?
to get that high, a $400,000 or 100,000 or 50.
You know, in today's, you know, with today's house values and the and the tax rate is what it is.
Mhm.
You know, what's the average homeowner paying? $5,000 a year for the average home. You figure if they didn't pay that, how many years is it going to take to get to $100,000?
So what on average? So how long is the taxpayer in arrears before you start the lien process and the foreclosure process? I mean,
It varies, and it usually is interest. You know, other taxpayers seeing the property, seeing it's in tax sale, saying, "Hey, you know, are you going to have a sale? Do you own that? Can I buy it?" And we say, "Oh, you're interested in that property?" We write your name down. We'll let you know if we ever whatever.
Mhm.
And then when we go to do another round of tax foreclosure requests to our attorney, to the land court, we look at that list because obviously, you know, it only makes business sense. If someone wants to buy it,
Mhm.
you know, let's foreclose on those. But typically, the ones we're gonna do are not gonna be 6 and 7 and 10 for homes. They're gonna be people who owe, you know, a lot of money.
Mhm.
You know, I'm talking about up to $100,000 in back taxes, maybe 80,000. It depends how long it's been and the number of years it's been outstanding.
Mhm.
Because some people have smaller tax bills, but they haven't paid for 15 years. So they may owe $100,000, but it's over that length of time.
Mhm.
So it depends on interest in the property, how much money we have in our budget to do foreclosures. And then again, we're looking at that amount, you know, do we want to wait? Do we want to try to get all? And again, before we even do that, we get a hold of the people saying, you know, hello, we're gonna, you know, what are you doing? We're going to foreclose and try to ferret that out and get something happening with an agreement, payment from somewhere else,
Mhm.
help with getting a loan, you know, all the different things that we try to do with people. It's like we're almost like a personal finance person because we get them in and help them look at their finances and then try to decide how they can pay it. So
Mhm.
we almost become like that. And it's an amazing process. It really is.
Mhm. I think that's it. So the city doesn't bundle and sell, but the city does sell properties and does collect revenue. Fair. Okay, good. That's what I wanted to make sure. And then also, I just want to mention, I mean, you know, the cost of abandoned or derelict properties that people don't want to pay their taxes for. So the city comes in and spends money getting that ready to sell and then finally sells it. I mean, there's a cost to leaving that derelict and abandoned too,
Yes.
right?
It's-
So,
yes.
I mean, so, you know, there's a balance here. So the city wants, you know, has to spend money, hopefully gets all of that back
Exactly.
and cleans up the neighborhood, right? Yeah.
Safe, safe.
Make it safe. Exactly. I think that's it for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anybody else. Counselor Frida?
What if I amended this petition, take out the word prohibit? And just suggested that the city of Leominster would not retain any equity remaining after a taxpayer's property, and then leave the third-party bundle in there as well. Instead of the word prohibit, that you would not retain any equity remaining on the taxpayer's obligation above and beyond what's due us.
Well, as I said before, for me, I want to, if it gets to the point where the people are not responding, I hate to lose that option. That's just my collector side. I'm sorry, but that's just how I am.
So we don't have a right to their equity in their property.
Well, we still do under, the law hasn't changed. There you go. It's not there yet. I honestly expect, and the Mass Treasury collectors, which we belong to, really thinks this is going to happen sooner than later. They really have, They see that they really think this is going to happen sooner than later. They've already been talking about the options and, you know, the things that we can do. And that's why the DOR got involved and said, well, you can hold the money for now. So we really feel it's going to happen. And you're knowing that we don't do that, you know, I'm for leaving everything status quo because we're okay. We don't do any of those things, except we keep the funds for people who really don't try to take care of things, you know, and put us through the mill to get that money. So my
How
opinion
many
is,
people really have that issue with you? I mean,
Yes.
there can't be a whole lot of people that, there
what is-
can't be a lot of people that just take advantage of the situation. I mean,
no, most
for those one
care,
or three people, maybe,
most
that-
care.
that, isn't it worth protecting the rest of the community for those two or three people that might
Uh,
want to do that?
Yeah, well, I
I
mean,
mean,
I can see your point. As I said, from the collection side, it's just, I lose a really good tool to help them cross that line to say, I guess we better get it paid. People who know, from my experience, that something's not going to happen and you can threaten it and they say, I'm going to do this, and they know you don't do it. They don't care. They know. They just know, you know, and I always found that as a very good tool. When I brought it out, I
it's
told,
not saying that you can't foreclose and get what's due to us.
oh, I
It's
understand.
saying not the excess money that is in the property that we shouldn't be keeping.
Yeah.
And if you're saying we're not keeping it anyway, what's the difference?
Well, we are right now. We,
Yeah,
yes, of
right.
course, of course. And like I said, we only made profits in the last two sales over the when I was lastly there in 20, and then Paul did a sale in 21 or 2, whenever it was. And he actually made a good profit on the stuff because that's when everything, real estate was going through, as you know, through the roof. But prior to that, every sale was a loss. We just did not make any funds, any money, because no one was paying. They were paying small amounts for things that were big dollars. What could we do? You know, what could we do? So, moving forward, I think that we will probably be able to make some money on sales of people who have the property's good. It's usually a home or a business that's not all dilapidated, that we don't have to spend a lot of money. And we probably would, but the number of times we do that is so small.
Which is my point. Just would it hurt you? Because you don't do it very often.
Yeah,
So
but
the point would be protecting our
yeah,
people and wouldn't be hurting the revenue.
but then I countered that to you with the fact that by having that available and telling people, well, you know, this is going to happen if I sell this, it puts them in another mode. We better probably take the honest people, and it makes them step forward and say, I guess there is a way I can get this resolved. Can I make an agreement? I'll borrow some money from this one, we'll do the reverse, whatever. I like that tool, but again, like I said, it's going to probably end up going away, but I hate to see it taken away from me.
Okay, I'm gonna do,
Excuse me. David, so in looking at the petition, the section that says also the city shall not engage with any third party that would participate in the practice of equity theft. So that's the bundling. I mean, do you have any problem with that? No. Thank you.
Not at all.
okay, I'm gonna do some committee work now. My position on this is, okay, first of all, I have no interest in the city of Leominster either selling pieces or bundles, tax titles. I have no interest in the city of Leominster keeping equity after the payment of all its just expenses and taxes. However, I have no interest in passing laws that aren't enforceable either. That's a disservice to the public, because you're suggesting in one hand that there's some protection, and guess what? There isn't. So moreover, the city solicitor has not answered the question regarding whether or not we can lawfully prohibit you from bundling those titles. I appreciate the fact that the city of Leominster has never done it, has no intention to do it. So I'm not concerned in the short term. So I think my position is going to be further time so we can do our due diligence and at least get Attorney Riley to answer the rest of the problem. And I will check with other members of my committee and see what their thoughts about this is. So maybe we can form a recommendation for later on. Council Angelini?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can summarize quickly. It's a travesty, obviously, that some communities in the state fund the leaves. People take advantage of people, financial trouble. But I'm a city council here in Leominster, community that's never been engaged in this practice. I find it difficult to justify taking money from taxpayers who are paying their taxes to seek legal opinions to protect those that aren't from a practice that we haven't engaged in historically. Secondly, those of us who understand what a Supreme Court decision means, ultimately, it's case law. Something called the Supremacy Clause. That decision ultimately applies to every state in the United States of America. So, and of course, Massachusetts is going to respond because the Supreme Court put them on notice that this practice is a violation of the Fifth Amendment taking clause. So yes, this will be fixed, and it will be fixed soon. So as far as I'm concerned, we're protecting people from something that we don't do, using money from people that are paying their taxes to pay for legal opinion. This whole thing, I think, is unnecessary. So I will concur. If we'd like to have the city solicitor answer the final question, the portion of the opinion that was sought, I'm okay with that. So I guess, yes, I'll be happy to give this further time as the chair requested. And I thank you both for your participation as well as Jennifer. Thank you.
Councilor Cormier?
Just briefly, and I'm going to support further time, and I think you're right there, is we have a more specific question to answer. Councilor Frida, I want to thank you for bringing this to the forefront because I think it's a very important issue. I come from a ward of older people and older homeowners that own, multifamily units, and they're having a hard time now. It used to be the good old days that the whole family lived in there and everybody got to pay a little less rent because it was all family owned. So it is important. It's important in my neighborhood. My fear, and Mr. Plant makes a great point, that this is an important negotiating tool that you have. And I get it. And my fear is now, and it's what I've watched in my neighborhood, as all these family-owned multifamily dwellings have now been purchased by corporations and are now run by management companies. My fear is exactly what I pointed out earlier, is that they're going to go in, they're going to collect their rents, they're going to let these places just, go to hell, and they're going to just collect their rents, and then they're going to turn and take off. And if there is any profit, these people are now going to get a windfall. But I agree, we can't take it from the homeowners. I think we need more time with it. I think we need another opinion from Brian Riley. I would agree with prohibiting the third-party sales with no issues at all. I think it's that other component that we need to work on, and I will defer to your 30 years of experience with the city. And I, we know that the citizens of Leominster are protected now. I understand what you're saying about the future. I agree with that. So I'm going to agree with further time, and I think we'd all be better served to get a little more clarity on that one particular issue.
Okay, so the recommendation when we are in our meeting later on will be further time. And with that, I'm going to conclude the subcommittee hearing. Thank you very much to the financial team for coming and supporting us and informing us this evening.
Couple of minutes, not even, and then we will go into our hearing. So
Get wet. Doesn't, it's not raining anymore.
All set?
Thank you, Mr. President. Petitioner, I see is out in the hallway, so perhaps we could summon them.
Okay.
Dr. Robichaud. And Chief Kennedy. Good evening. The public hearing at 6:30 is open. Good evening. My name is Peter Angelini, Chairman of the Legal Affairs Committee, and I'm joined this evening by my colleagues on Legal Affairs. So Mark Andrew, Ward 4 Counselor, and Counselor Todd Deacon, the at-large counselor across from me. And we begin by reading Petition 7-24. Sergeant Greg Robichaud respectfully requests that the ordinance governing the parking garage between Miriam Avenue and Colburn Court be revised. This is due to the fact that the existing ordinance references making payments to parking meters that are no longer in service. The current system used at the parking garage is one of free parking in all areas except where posted permit parking only, with the permits being issued by the Leominster City Hall. Again, this was given regular course on September 11th, and we are indeed holding a public hearing tonight. And Sergeant Robichaud, since you are the petitioner, I will give you the floor and you can explain why you're seeking this ordinance change. Very much, sir. Probably about an informed that wanted to update parking tickets, treasurer of parking tickets, and asked me if there's any updates or anything needed to be done before they printed a whole batch of new ones. So I brought up some concerns we had in the past with the parking garage and some of the parking system. We've been given complaints regarding it, but we weren't able to enforce it based on the ordinance. But that now is the perfect time to update the ordinance. So in the course of reading through the ordinance and compliance with what would like to happen, so we noticed the fact that the address is located directly in the ordinance at Marion Avenue. So and applied a draft that quotes the current ordinance and also highlight updated changes. I don't know if you'd like me to read them. Please. Current ordinance, the way it's written, amending chapter 13 of the revised ordinances entitled Motor Vehicle Traffic.
Chapter 13, Section 13, 11, revised ordinances, parking within spaces, hereby amended as follows. Replace Colburn Street at Colburn Court. After the words, quote, parking area, the owner or operator of such vehicle shall park within the spaces designated by street parking lot. Remove the words, quote, upon entering said parking area, shall immediately deposit or cause to be deposited in such meter the required coin of the United States, the parking period or proportional period thereof, as stated, shown on the meter, if so required, shall set the mechanism in motion. The fee for the selected time shall be in the amounts designated on the meter. Such a meter deposit shall not be required if the owner or operator of the vehicle has been issued a permit to park in the area, in said area and the permit. End quote. And to add the word, quote, there shall be no charge for parking in an open space not conspicuously posted as permit parking only. Parking shall be prohibited in spaces conspicuously posted as permit parking only, unless the owner or operator of the vehicle has issued a permit to park that area. Permit is unexpired and end quote. And the struck portion originally currently says, upon entering parking area, shall immediately deposit or cause to be deposited in such meter the required coin of the United States for the new parking period, proportional period thereof, as indicated or shown on the meter, and if so required, shall set the mechanism. Also struck, fee for the selected time shall be the minimum amount designated. Also struck, such meter shall deposit shall not be required if the operator has been issued a permit to park in said area. That would do, currently the way the ordinance is written, it requires people to pay a meter that hasn't been in existence in several years. So in order to be in compliance with the ordinance, people would have to pay a meter that's a month. And there's no, other than the prohibition on here, or the statement saying that people were issued a permit from City Hall, there was no enforcement under the current parking ticket system. So strike the language that's recommended to be stricken and to add language that's recommended to be added. Would allow us the ability to enforce the parking permit, and it would also eliminate the whole requirement to pay the meter.
So I do have a question. I'm just confused about Colburn Court.
Yeah.
That's, we're going, because in the revised, we're going to Colburn Court, not Colburn Street.
Correct. Colburn Street is what's currently in the ordinance.
Right.
And Colburn Court is the name of the street that runs between the parking garage and the police park.
Okay. So this really should have had some a strike through there
All
on the ordinance.
yes.
All right. Okay. That's what confused me. Thank you. So this is basically just the housekeeping tasks, because obviously rules have changed dramatically since that ordinance has been adopted. Well, you're paying attention, Sergeant. Thank you. Let me see if members of my committee have any questions. Council Bonanza?
No, that makes sense. I mean, thank you for updating it and making it conform to current circumstances. Just these permits would be for employees largely, right? Anybody?
Public, anyone.
Okay. Yeah. Any circumstance where a permit would be revoked on the
They're run 100% in City Hall.
Yeah.
We have no input, get them, who gets involved.
Okay.
Basically, they have to be hanging under the park there and the doesn't be displayed.
Okay. Thank you, Sergeant.
The Deacon. Members of the council, I wish to question Officer over Councilor Frida.
Can somebody, is there a limit on how many people can purchase?
I don't know if they have a certain number set aside or if they hire parking garage permit at some point.
Where is that gonna be? I'm sorry, I might have missed that. I was looking at something. Who's gonna make that determination, City Hall? The mayor's office? So, if we wanted to, we could change that, or we could amend it, limiting a certain number to an individual. I mean, if you had an employer downtown that wanted to buy 10 parking spots or 20 parking spots and then it prohibited somebody else, I suppose it doesn't matter, but it would matter to the additional people trying to get in there. So maybe we need to find out who's going to be or how it's going to be determined and who's going to be the authority on it.
I've noticed that parking permit signs have gone up. There are still 3 spots open underneath the parking garage. As of right now, there are no permit-only spots on the top of the parking garage, other than those reserved for the police department, which I'm under the assumption that are going to be the ones that are leaving. So once we move away from our new building, we won't need those parking spots anymore, so that should free up, I believe. Well, that should free up a lot of spots, but as far as managing the permit process that's referenced in here, that's done through the mayor's office. So if anything wants to be done to expand or limit that, that would be done through the ordinance.
I'm just thinking of the courthouse and, all the surrounding areas that there's probably going to be a good number of people that are going to be looking for that. Trying to be equitable with it. Maybe we can find that out.
Yeah, I can do another draft and set aside certain numbers, or set aside the top of the parking garage is 3 and the bottom is permanent, or however we can shoot the big things.
Or any of the councils? Sergeant Robichaud. Seeing none, before I go to the public on this, let me read into the record the letter that was penned by Sergeant Robichaud accompanying this request for the ordinance change. It's dated August 31st, 2023. Honorable City Council members, I respectfully request that the ordinance governing the parking garage between Miriam Avenue and Colburn Court be revised. This is due to the fact that the existing ordinance references making payments, parking meters that are no longer in service. The current system used at the parking garage is one of free parking in all areas except where posted, permit parking only, with the permits being issued by the Leominster City Hall. I support this revision to the ordinance because it removes the possibility of confusion regarding paid parking in the garage while codifying and allowing the enforcement of the current permit parking only system. It also corrects the location of the parking garage from Colburn Street to Colburn Court. Thank you for your consideration to this matter. If you have any questions, you may contact me at the phone number listed below, Sergeant Robichaud, Leominster Traffic Division. Is there anyone in the public this evening that would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to petition 7-24? The second time, is there anyone in attendance this evening that would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to petition 7-24? And for the third and final time, is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to petition 7-24? And I see none, Mr. President. I'm not opposed to certainly clarifying where these permits are available. If that's something that you wouldn't have a problem with, I think we had a council that recommended that, and perhaps that would be something to clarify. City Hall is a rather big building, so perhaps we could point people to a specific location to acquire their permits. And but let me check with one more time. Council Vidanza?
I'm all set.
Council Devo? Okay. Anybody else in the council can say offer to the members of the committee? Okay. So I probably don't want to close this public hearing because we're going to be amending it. So I would ask, probably going to recommend further time. So we'll see how this plays out. So I thank you, gentlemen.
Wouldn't you
Do-
just
do you
be
want-
keeping the hearing open?
I'm gonna keep it open.
Not for the time right now, just keeping the hearing open.
And do you,
Close the closing.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, do you have a new date and time we're gonna continue it to?
Our next available is going to be October 10th, which is a Tuesday because of the holiday at 6:40 p.m.
Okay, so later in the meeting, we can vote on that, but that's as of now, what it'll be, October 10th at 6:40. So Angelina, I think Council Free has another question. I think Council Free has another question.
No, actually, it's just a procedural question for the clerk. I think all of these need to be changed to get regular course on 9/11. Regular course is actually 9/18. I think, for the future record, it should all be changed. I think there are a number of them.
Okay, no problem.
Are you all set?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you can move on to the next public hearing, which was supposed to be at 6:35.
Thank you, Mr. President. 8-24, Sergeant Greg Robichaud respectfully requests that the ordinance governing the schedule of parking fines be revised. This is due to the fact that there are modifications and corrections to the existing ordinance that need to be made to bring it into conformance with existing and proposed ordinances. Once again, I'm going to turn it over to Sergeant Robichaud if he's ready. Yes. Thanks, Lee. That's fine.
First suggested change involves adding a violation to Group A to allow a penalty for violating the permit parking only section of the parking garage. Marion Avenue over. Current ordinance and schedule of fines does not allow for the parking units. Also necessitates numbering. And suggested change would be the all-night parking violation. To be consistent with the removal of the parking ban in favor of the current declaration of snow emergency. Next suggested change would be add the quote not to exceed $50. Language is missing from the existing ordinance. Violation. Last suggested change would be in Group B, violation number 20. Quote, blocking wheelchair ramps. Not to exceed $50 for each offense and for each subsequent vehicle meet. Current notice of violation ticket. No group B violation. Walking a wheelchair ramp and stepping in a handicap ramp have the same effect on mobility and access. Where it was specifically designed to follow this, they should both be given. These revisions because it brings the ordinance in line with current enforcement. Clarifies the language. Consideration matter. Questions?
Thank you, Sergeant Robichaud. Did you have any infractions related to blocking of wheelchair ramps? That
Personally, over the course of the year, yes, I've written. They've mostly been limited to some of our larger housing complexes where the residents complain that they requested their management to have a handicap plaque put by their residents. And then people were parking immediately next to it for the ramp was. So technically they're not parking in the lot, they're blocking the ramp. So I have written that ticket in the past, except with my coworker with that.
okay, wonderful. Yeah, that would be maddening. If you were a handicap, without questions. All right, thank you. I certainly understand it. Thank you for reading the letter for me. Spared me the trouble. Members of my committee, I do this too. Councilor Bonanza, do you have any questions?
I'm all set.
The Deacon. All right, are there any members of the city council that would like to pose a question to Sergeant Robichaud regarding petition 8-24? All right. Seeing none, we'll go to the public. Is there anyone in attendance this evening who would like to speak either in favor of or in opposition to petition 8-24? The second time, is there anyone in opposition or in support of petition 8-24 that would like to speak on this? And for the third and final time, is there anyone in attendance this evening that would like to speak either in favor of or in opposition to petition 8-24? Seeing none, Mr. Chairman, I will declare this public hearing closed.
Okay. All right, and we do have another public hearing, which was scheduled for 6:45 PM on 5-24. You all set? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you, guys. We're good. Thank you. We're moving right along. Sorry. 6:45 PM, public hearing for 5-24. This does involve part of this infrastructure is going to be partially owned by my employer, so I'm required to abstain. So I'd ask the vice president, I'm going to step out to keep track of the time at 7 o'clock and call me back in. But Councilor Shalfo Zephyr, this is your public hearing.
Thank you very much. This is petition 5-24, Massachusetts Electric Company, DBA National Grid, and Verizon New England, Inc. Request permission to locate poles, wires, fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way. Mechanic Street, National Grid to install one jointly owned pole on Mechanic Street beginning at a point approximately 130 feet east of the center line of the intersection of Johnny Appleseed Lane and continuing approximately 45 feet in a north direction. Install midspan pole approximately 40 feet west of pole number 8950 for new service from Department of Transportation traffic cameras on I-190. Location approximately is shown on plan attached. Wherefore it prays that after due notice and hearing is provided by law, it be granted a location for and permission to erect and maintain poles and wires, together with sustaining and protecting fixtures as it may find necessary, Said poles to be erected substantially in accordance with the plan filed herewith marked Mechanic Street, Leominster, Massachusetts, number 30611-455, July 28th, 2023. Also for permission to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings as each of said petitioners may desire for distributing purposes. Your petitioner agrees to reserve space for one cross arm at a suitable point on each of said poles for the fire, police, telephone, and telegraph signal wires belonging to the municipality and used by it exclusively for municipal purposes. So this public hearing was originally scheduled for September 11th and is rescheduled to this evening due to our state of emergency on that Monday evening. So is there anybody here from National Grid? Would you like to come up, sir? Could you talk into the mic, please?
You guys hear me? Good evening, Leominster City Council. My name is Mike Masiak, representing National Grid this evening.
Would you spell your last name? I'm sorry.
MACIAG. Yeah, we're brought together here today to talk about this poll hearing on Mechanic Street in Johnny Appleseed. As you mentioned, this is for one service pole specifically for Mass DOT. This is where this work request stemmed from. 35-foot pole, approximately 35-40 feet west of existing pole 89-50 for Mass DOT to service their traffic cameras. I am not the specific designer for this work request, so I'm here to answer any questions, comments, concerns the best I can. Relay any information back to you guys or back to the company or that specific designer. That will go forth with the other two poll hearings I'm here for as well.
Mm-hmm. So what is exactly going to be mounted on this new pole? It says security cameras for 190. Is there anything else going on there?
That is not going to be mounted specifically on this pole. What's going to be mounted on this pole is steel conduits for secondary conductors. What ends up happening is conduits get swept up on the pole. We bring over secondary conductors overhead to that sweep, make our overhead to underground connection, and Mass DOT takes it onto Mass DOT's property off of 190 for their traffic cameras.
Okay. Does anybody, I'll go to my committee first. Councilor Frieda, do you have any questions for National Grid about this? Councilor Brady? Okay. I did talk to one of the abutters in the area and he was actually fine with that. So I'll go to the council. Do any members of the city council have questions? Councilor Cormier.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My question, it's, and I don't have the map in front of me, is I'm looking at where the Johnny Rowe Park is.
Mm-hmm.
And where is that pole going to be in relation to the pole that's there now? Do you know?
Approximately 35 to 40 feet west of existing pole 89-50.
So that would be further up the hill on Mechanic?
Towards I-90 northbound.
Okay.
Not familiar with which park you're speaking of, but west of Mechanic Street, more towards the Johnny Appleseed Lane.
There are two existing poles, Councilor Cormier. Can you see
Yeah.
those?
No, that's fine. I don't have any further questions. I'm going to need to take a look at it myself. Thank you.
Okay. To the city clerk, do you know, would there have been any abutter notice sent to the Johnny Rowe Park? I don't know who has responsibility for that. Would it be the DPW or somebody? Would they have gotten notice as an abutter?
The city gets notice for that.
Like, who in the city?
we got it back in our office. That's where they put it in. So it would go to the mayor's office and they passed it back to us.
Okay, and we haven't received any feedback from anybody associated with the Johnny Rowe Park. Council Cormier.
I have, here's where I stand. After the public hearing and everything, it's going to be my position to ask for further time. Here's my reasoning why.
Mhm.
I have been working with people on Johnny Appleseed Lane for several months. I expect to file a petition on their behalf to fix that intersection.
Okay.
It's a very, very dangerous intersection. And my thought is until we have a plan and know what the city is planning to do about that intersection there, the sidewalks there, the safety of getting in and out of Johnny Rowe Park. There's a new development that's going in and sharing that same parking lot with Johnny Appleseed across the street. I have a lot of constituents up there who are desperate to have something to do with that intersection. So it's going to be my request that we grant it further time because I would like to see a plan and I don't want to have National Grid and Verizon go in there and do all this and then the city have to come in and do something with that intersection. Whether or not we're able to do something with it, I don't know. That remains to be seen, but I certainly don't want to I wouldn't give my approval for anything tonight that could affect their getting something done to that intersection.
Alrighty, thank you, Counselor. Did you have a comment?
I do. I do want to go ahead and state forward that Leominster DPW has been on site and was okay by this. This was DPW approved. Future plans, I think, should not hold up this work request today. I understand that you have developments going on, but I think it's important for Mass DOT to get to be treated equally as well too, to get service connections for their service request.
No, I understand that too, but, you know, a 2-week delay, I mean, is there anything critical about this? I mean, they've lived without.
Not to my knowledge, but I can relay the information forward.
Okay. Okay. Well, we will, we'll have a conversation about it. And at this point, does anybody else on the council have, questions or comments for National Grid? At this point, given the Ward 2 councilors' comments, I mean, I would leave the public hearing open and we certainly will check in with DPW and try to get a timeline, Councilor Cormier, for when you could expect some kind of plan. And then maybe we could get sign off from, DPW and whoever is doing that plan that would allow us to, pass this perhaps next time. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's 7:01.
Oh, okay. We need to recess. We have a motion. Do we have a motion to recess?
We'll start the meeting first to do our pledge and then we'll come do the recess and go back. We'll be right back.
Join me for a salute to the flag. I'm now going to take a roll call of the honorable members of the Leominster City Council, beginning with Councilor Bedanza.
Present.
Councilor Cormier.
Present.
Councilor Ardinger. Present. Councilor Angelini. Present. Councilor Brady. Present. Councilor Shalfo Zephyr. Present. Councilor Deacon. Present. Councilor Frida. All 9 members are present this evening. Does the Vice President have any records to this evening?
I do, Mr. President. I reviewed the minutes from August 14th, 2023 and August 28th of 2023. I find them to be in good standing and I ask that they be placed on file.
Okay, if there's no objection, we will ask that the minute for August 14th and August 28th, 2023 be placed on file.
And
Seeing none, those will be on file.
thank you. The September 18th meeting, I just asked for one further date so I can review those.
Okay, and if anyone has any questions or comments on those minutes, if you can get them to the Vice President as soon as possible so that we can get them in final form and accept them at the next meeting, that would be great. This time I would ask for a motion for a recess. Councilor Shalfo Zephyr, and I think Councilor Bedanza, I saw your hand next. So all those in favor of going into recess signify in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, we now stand in recess. And Councilor Shalfo Zephyr, you can continue with your hearing.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much. So there's no one else on the council who has any comments or questions. Then I will go to the public. Is there anybody here in the audience that would like to speak on this petition 5-24, either for or against it? For a second time, is there anybody who'd like to speak? This is the proposed telephone pole on Mechanic Street across from Johnny Appleseed Lane. And for a third and final time, I'll ask if anybody has any comments or questions about that from the public. Okay, seeing none, my position at this time would be to keep the public hearing open. Yes.
Just suggest October 10th, 2023 at 6:35 p.m.
At 6:35 p.m.
Yes.
And we will vote on that when we have our conversation. Good. Moving on to petition 9-24, Massachusetts Electric Company, DBA National Grid, requests permission to locate poles, wires, fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way. West Street, National Grid to install one solely owned pole on West Street, beginning at a point approximately 50 feet north-northwest of the center line of the intersection of West Street and University Street. Install one solely owned stub pole, number 50-84, to replace tree guy. Location approximately is shown on plan attached. Wherefore, it prays that after due notice and hearing is provided by law, it be granted a location for and permission to erect and maintain poles and wires, together with each sustaining and protecting fixtures as it may find necessary. Said poles to be erected substantially in accordance with the plan filed herein, marked West Street, Leominster, Massachusetts, number 308-44056, September 6th, 2023. Also for permission to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings as each of said petitioners may desire for distributing purposes. So, Mr. Maciag, would you like to explain what this is for?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me expand upon that a little bit. I understand tree guy, stub pole. It's almost maybe a different language to use up to some of y'all. Currently, this pole, existing pole -50, is supported by a tree. There's a guy wire with an anchor bolted into the tree that is there to support it from leaning.
Mhm.
It was old time practice to say. As you guys have experienced recently, the state of emergency, trees come down.
Mhm.
So this is a big safety issue. This work request was put in for safety, really just to remove the tree guy. I'm not sure if this was requested per DPW. However, it is a safety concern of ours, and that stub pole is fixed in place in the ground rather than that tree that could be dead, rotting, leaning, about to come down. It's more for reliability, for the sake of overhead lines as well, for all the customers. Any other questions? I'm here to answer. I hope I checked all boxes
Mhm.
there.
So, pole number 50, which is existing, right? So this would be putting a pole across the street,
Correct.
across the street,
In
So-
place of the tree, yes.
in place of a tree,
The
Wait.
tree
the tree. Where is the guy wire now?
in the tree.
I didn't see one there today. I mean, it looks like a tree that's been cut down, and there's a big stump where I was looking, but I didn't see any kind of guy wire or anything connecting to the pole across the street.
It may have been removed prior. It has been previously in the tree,
Mm-hmm.
maybe due to the tree work or current hazards with the tree at the previous weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It's been removed, but over time, it is a safety concern because that pole will just begin leaning more and more. So in place of the tree is the pole that we're here for today.
Is there any way to buttress or, make stronger that pole 50 on the other side of the street? There's nothing really there right now except somebody's nice green lawn.
Are you speaking for pole 50?
I am.
Existing pole 50?
Well, that's the one that you're trying to shore up. Is that correct?
Correct.
I mean, is there any way to shore that up, but on the other side of the street, like next to it?
It would not support the angle that is taking. The feeder is, looks like it's moving approximately northwest up West Street. It begins to take a turn due to the weight of conductors that sit on top of these poles. We need to account for angles.
Mhm.
That angle across the street is best to reduce leaning in this situation.
Well, can the pole, can the pole be fixed instead of running more wires across the street? I mean, if a pole is leaning, shouldn't it be fixed in place?
It would need a support, which would be the proposed pole dash 50-84. There's no matter what size pole we put there, no matter what class, over time it'll tend to lean because of the angles on it. Therefore, we would have to install pole 50-84.
Do you know how long it's been there without a guy wire in place?
I do not.
Could you check that?
I could.
Could you find out? Thank you. Okay, at this point, I'm going to go to my committee, which is Council Frida. Fine, okay. Council Brady? Okay. Anybody else on the council have any questions, or Councilor Angelini?
Masiag.
Masiad.
So. This poll serving exclusive for being an anchor.
Correct.
There'll be no Verizon, National Grid wires of any kind on it.
Correct. It's a proposed sole and pole.
So the overhead wires that you're showing on this plan, it's not really what, it's a guy wire, right?
It's a guy wire. There'll be no live electric lines over that now. Strictly for guying purposes and the structure and integrity of the pole line on West Street.
Well, this is an odd one. I mean, we do have a referral from the DPW. They don't mention that they had requested this. Not sure. Forestry Department here wants to remove that tree, or the tree is in by National Grid or a subcontractor of National Grid. So I mean, I'm kind of curious about that too. So I'd like those answers before I felt comfortable.
Okay.
Sorry, you're welcome, Councilor Angelini. Councilor Arger.
The tree is what I call referred to as a totem. It's basically a large stump of the tree. It's cut off the top. And I'm not sure how soon or how recently they've been removed, but I've looked at that tree for a couple of years and wondered why that guy wire was in that tree. And just looking at it, it makes sense to me that we need a pole there because of the configuration on pole 50, P50, right? So that's just, to me, it seems like a logical thing to do. Just my comments.
Any other councils have any questions or concerns? All right. Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak about this petition? Sir, would you come up? You have to come up here, and if you would sit next to Mr. Masiag, please, and give your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Bill Hawk, and I live at 418 West Street, where this pole is going to go. I guess what I want to know is it going to affect the wires that go into my house? They're just going to attach a guy wire? Is it a regular size pole, or is it duration?
I know. This is not going to be on 418, not your private property. We would need an easement for that. This is going to be in the public right of way. That's why we're here at the city council. Yeah. this is gonna be a 35-foot pole. It's not gonna be anything more different than you see down across the street. This will not affect your service in any way. There's actually not gonna be any electrical lines on that pole.
I have a couple stakes in my yard.
Right. Right, I saw those.
I mean, that's city property,
Mhm.
I guess. So I guess that's where it's.
So that stake is marked out for that pole and its approximate location. There is an issue. There's some variable we can play around with that. That's why we're here. So
No, that's fine. You answered my questions. Just didn't know about. All right.
Okay, I have a question. It says stub pole. Install one solely owned stub pole. What's that mean? What's a stub pole?
stub pole is basically another term we use to use for a pole for more support rather than carrying conductors. Stub pole is just a pole really used to counter the effects of these turns and tensions within the lines of these overhead lines. So a stub pole won't have any live conductors on it. It's strictly used for the structure and integrity of the feeders.
Of the pole across the street.
Correct.
Right, okay. So I have a couple of questions I'd like you to answer, or not, you don't have to answer, but you can bring them back to National Grid. If you would ask if there's any way to engineer it so that it is supported on the other side of the street rather than adding a new pole on that side of West Street. And then Councilor Angelini, do you want to repeat your questions so that he can have those answered for you as well? I mean, how long, I don't know.
I have an answer for you now. So instead of the stub pole solution that we drafted up now, which is in the public right of way, would be a push brace on the opposite side of that pole, which would be another pole now going onto the property 421. That would require an easement and we wouldn't have to be here. However, the likelihood of someone wanting a pole in their private property as well too becomes a little bit more challenging. So pole 50 as it stands now wants to lean a certain way. That's why we have that pole and guy wire to pull it over that stub pole. It wants to lean one way, we have a push brace for it to lean up against. However, that push brace span is a lot more of a structure than a guy wire and pole. It now is placed at an angle and can really impede into somebody's private property. It's not also the most cost effective.
I mean, it doesn't sound to me like a very good solution, honestly, because impeding on somebody's, private property, I don't think is a good solution. So I'm asking, I guess, if there's an engineering solution, that would work over there that does not include, going onto somebody's private property. Councilor Angelini?
And while we're at it, I think the chairman committee may remember this. A while back, we had a pole on Merriam Avenue that was on private property. A young woman there put up a fence and National Grid didn't have an easement for that pole on private property. But engineering department told us if that pole wasn't replaced where it is, all the other poles were gonna fall down.
They never came back.
Replaced,
No.
everything's still standing. So I sometimes question logic of these things. So should be aware we're paying attention.
Absolutely.
Right.
Just to confirm, we're talking about West Street, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, West Street, right across from University. The other thing is too, we are paying attention and I think we need to think about newer ways of doing this rather than just putting in another big old pole. I think you were probably here for conversations we had about double poles, which was, a little removed from this. Okay. But anyways, we're just trying to get this stuff done, but in a way that doesn't really impact, people's lawns and yards. So if you can ask those questions, that would be helpful, and we can do a little exploring with our DPW. Certainly, Councilor Angelini. But at least it's in the same spot.
In the end, you're still getting 2 poles.
But it's not in a new location. I mean,
Um,
it's,
I would have to speak with the
that's a good
specific
idea.
designer on
Thank
this.
you.
However, I don't see any other way without getting away with some sort of pole hearing in this case scenario, whether it's on the same street, on the same side of the street or opposite side of the street. Rather shortening the spans or whatever the case would be, it would still result in a pole hearing.
Okay.
I think this would be the easiest solution, as it's kind of already been existing in the past, except it was a tree. But there's more to explore. I can always bring these results back and then.
Thank you. I mean, you can see where we're going, right? I mean, we'd like to craft a solution or have you craft a solution that, stabilizes the pole, but also kind of minimizes the impact in the neighborhood. So thank you. Is there anybody in the audience? Does anybody else on the council have any questions or comments? I don't see any. Okay, so we'll go to the audience now. Does anybody in the audience would like to speak either for or against petition 9-24? Is there anybody who'd like to speak either in favor or in opposition to 9-24? And for final time, is there anybody who'd like to speak for or against petition 9-24? So at this point, I would like to keep the public hearing open and schedule another public hearing, please.
October 10th at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you very much.
The next one is 6-24, of which I will need to abstain from this one.
Petition 6-24, Massachusetts Electric Company doing business as National Grid and Verizon New England, Inc. requests permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way. Maple Avenue, National Grid to install one jointly owned pole on Maple Ave, beginning at a point approximately 200 feet north of the center line of the intersection of Maple Ave and West Street. Install new pole number 1-84 on Maple Ave. Location approximately as shown on the plan attached. Wherefore it prays that after due notice and hearing is provided by law, it be granted a location for and permission to erect and maintain poles and wires, together with such sustaining and protecting fixtures as it may find necessary. Said poles to be erected substantially in accordance with the plan filed herein marked Maple Ave, Leominster, Massachusetts, number 307-86056, July 18th, 2023. Also for permission to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings as each of said petitioners may desire for distributing purposes. So this public hearing was originally scheduled on 9/11/23 and rescheduled to tonight due to the emergency that we had with flooding. So Mr. Masag, would you like to walk us through this one too?
Yeah, absolutely. This
Thank
one
you.
is the petition for this installation of new pole 1-84 and its anchor on Main Ave in Leominster, Mass. is proposed for increased reliability. This is a reliability work request for reconductoring of a new feet of the existing feeder on Maple Ave. Reconductoring could also mean, bigger wires in today's world, the demand for electricity. Those heavier wires create a lot more stresses on these poles. A lot like the previous work request we just spoke of. This is another support pole for the leading of the existing poles. Pole 1-84 is also another stub pole. They're strictly for support. It is on the opposite end of Maple Ave. to connect to pole 2 and pole 1, which are both currently existing, to support the leaning and impacts of the reconductoring of the feeder.
Could you explain the reconductoring?
Reconductoring is just really replacing the current conductors on the pole top configuration with new, more reliable conductors.
And those are being replaced on both poles,
Correct.
pole 1 and 2? Why do they need extra support? Why do they need a new pole?
Due to the weight, the added weight on top of the poles and the angle that it's already existing at, it's just best practice to be prepared for the potential for these poles to be leaning in the future. It does take another slight angle as the previous work request. You know, nothing here or in the previous one is dead straight. So the forces and physics applied over time will result these poles to lean without the added support of proposed pole 1-84 and the 2 guy wires. We're trying to prevent it from leaning, which could be a severe safety issue in the future.
Why aren't the poles structured so that they can hold the weight of the new technology? I mean, I don't understand.
It's just the physics of things. That what it really comes down to, the forces of that are applied and the longevity of it. It's the engineering practices we have to take.
So if you're putting new conductoring equipment on an old pole, why don't, when you put the new conductoring equipment, put in a new pole that can support the weight of that?
Those poles
New
are being
equipment.
replaced. Again, you know, it might be fine this year and next year. Over time, longevity of it, these poles are going to begin to lean. That's why we address it now rather than when it's too late. So we are doing our due diligence to replace, and when we do this reliability work requests, we're bringing our current infrastructure up to existing standards. However, with the physics implied, there's a little bit more we need to add to it, which would be pole 1-84.
And has any thought been given to getting supports for each of the existing poles on the same side of the street? Kind of braces or anything that you can do to support them on the same side where they exist?
I believe it has been considered, yes.
Okay. And
No result. It's same as previous scenario. Again, it would be impeding on private property on both 9 Maple Ave, 5 Maple Ave. Public right of ways were very limited.
right. No, I understand that. I'm going to go to my committee, see if anybody has any questions. Council Frida? Mr. Brady? You good with it? Does any of the councilors have any questions? Councilor Angelini?
Sure. Start putting in poles. Support more of that.
Correct. Yeah, we have current existing standards for we call them class. The class of poles is practically the girth of them. You know, we go from toothpick to a little bit bigger. Yeah, they've been around. We all have requirements we have to meet and specifications we need to bring current infrastructure up to.
Physics would reference earlier. Dictate it by the girl.
Yes, over time, with weather and storm hardening, ice, snow, wind, you'd be surprised, but over time, it can only support so much.
That it's not on their property, but maintaining it for years and certainly if you know better, you would think it was your problem. So did you mention too in your testimony that there'd be two guy wires associated with this pole?
Correct. This will be going spanning from pole 2 to pole 1-84 and also pole 1-84 to pole 1.
Proposed pole would have one guy wire.
Proposed pole will have one going from pole 2 to pole 1-84, which is the proposed pole, and also the proposed pole 1-84 to the existing pole 1. That is to limit the angle that pole 1 and pole 2 take as it takes a turn down Maple Ave.
Pole 2 is leaning. Now, looks to me, I'm not an engineer, but it looks to me like pole 2 is ready to fall over. So I'd really like to see you guys replace pole number 2, put in a new pole, but that's just me. If you do go forward with this pole 184, proposed pole, lead anchor, can the guy wire be designed with what they call a sidewalk guy wire? Because, and I'll tell you why, there's no sidewalk on that side of the street. The traffic, like, you know, at most of our main arteries, people go flying by there. There's kids getting off the bus, walking. The gentleman at 16 Ankle, where that pole is gonna be abutting his property, is kind enough to, you know, he doesn't mind the children walking on his lawn, but, you know, he doesn't want that wire to be impeding their progress. So we point out the guy wires, it comes down and then sort of does a 90 and, you know, so kids can walk under it. And I think that would be the most advantageous.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. That's a good question. I can look into it. I can consult with. Yeah, that's a good question. I can definitely consult with the specific designer on this and get you that answer. However, we're still going to have to proceed with a poll hearing rather, regardless of which decision's made with the anchor.
I'd like to know how the anchor configuration reform. Just my position. Gentlemen, at least one person in the audience, I think, would like to speak on this, so I'd like to hear what they have to say as well. But thank you, Council.
Are there any other councils who would like to ask questions or comment? Any other comments? Okay, I'll go to the public then. Is there anybody in the public who would like to speak on petition 6-24? Certainly, yes. Yep, come on up. And would you give your name and address, sir, for the public record?
Taking it out?
No, so 2 different types of cable. So this would be actually energized cable, higher voltage. Here would just be a lighter metallic cable, which is not carrying any current. It's really just a brace to support these 2 poles from taking this turn.
You're putting an anchor in? On both poles?
I don't believe there is an anchor on.
Huh?
I don't believe there is an anchor.
Well, if you're coming across the street.
That pole is leaning over that way. It wants to go over that way. We would not anchor it in that position though.
Really? Never heard of that before. This Joe Public.
Technically, you need anchors here for the road crossing. These cables are coming out, right?
Which cables are you talking about? Because I'm just trying to follow the conversation.
The requesting the cables between the span of existing pole 1 and pole 2 are being removed.
Mhm.
The answer is no.
What kind of cables are those? Are those strengthening
not-
cables?
Guying this off when you're
Not to my knowledge, no.
coming across. Here.
Guy wires supporting the 2 poles. From pole 1-84. Pole 2, that is existing. And from pole 1-84, pole 1, that is existing.
An anchor on this one.
No,
No? So what's this here? This is 17 feet.
that is the anchor lead length. That is where the anchor would go on this, on proposed pole 1-84. We're at the public hearing today for pole 1-84, not what's already existing on
There's
pole
a
2 and pole
5-foot lead here.
Well, those are both related. So any questions related to pole number 1 and 2 that you're trying to support with this new one, certainly are within the discussion here.
That's 17 feet. This
So there's-
fall here. No, that's a 5-foot lead.
5-foot lead off the pole with a 17 length cable. So the cable would be spanning from the top of the pole to go down approximately 5 feet away from the pole.
Yeah.
5 feet approximately.
In which direction?
West.
Well, then the anchor would be.
Right,
in
right.
Yeah.
Where
Goes-
my bushes are.
Yep. I understand that. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to ask you, Mr. Masiak, to go back to National Grid and explore if there are any other options to support those 2 existing poles on the same side of the street. And Mr. Finley, any questions that you have, you might want to ask to Mr. Masiak before he leaves the meeting, so that you can get a better idea of what the concept is and you understand where we're coming from, or I'm coming from. All right. Councilor Angelini.
Perhaps it would be helpful.
From each pole.
So it's like the guy wires. It's confusing.
Prove 'em.
The guy wire and anchor, the proposed new anchor is on the legend of this sketch. That helps.
It's not showing how it's. I understand.
Oh,
I can
you're
read
talking
what
about the
legend-
overhead, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I can make note of that.
And even the plan showing it, showing it as in a drawing, what exactly you're proposing, here's the road, here's the proposed new pole, and here's how the anchor would be. This is the bird's eye view. I want something that's more of, looking right at it, plant view. Okay? All right. Is there anybody else in the audience who has any, certainly, ma'am, do you want to come up and give your name and address for the record, please?
Letters. I'm sorry. I received 2 certified letters
Mhm.
of them say they have a key attached or a map.
Right, there's no map.
There was nothing.
I know.
So I have no idea. My pole that's on my property
Mhm.
leans toward my house.
Mhm.
My neighbor, Stephen, at 5 Maple Ave, right next to me. His pole also leans.
Mhm.
We always are afraid when it's windy or stormy that that's coming down on our cars, our house. I didn't get a key, so I have no idea what's going on, but was asked to come to this. So I'd like to explain to me, and I'm sitting back there with my mother.
Mhm.
We can't hear anything.
Oh, oh,
You can't
sorry.
hear anything and everyone talking has their back to you. I've never seen anything like it. Why don't they sit up there so we can hear them and see what they're saying? We can hear you, but
Mhm.
we can't hear anybody else.
You know, this, this is, not our normal setup. This is not our normal council. We're out of City Hall because it was flooded, the basement. So this is a temporary place for us to meet. So it's not ideal. And I understand. I'm sorry that the microphones aren't working.
Anything. We were just hoping we would hear when it was our turn.
Okay. Well, this is your turn. I mean, I can give you the map that I have. And
Okay.
that's something, that's,
Oh.
oh, he's got it. Yeah. But that is something that we're actually, I think, going to rectify either tonight or at our next meeting, that all notices that go to abutters about these kinds of things will include the plan. Right now, the plan doesn't go with the notice, which is crazy. So we're going to fix that.
Okay, fine. Is it the pole that's at the end of my driveway that
Mhm.
they're talking about?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep. And the one at your neighbor's as well at number 5.
Steve's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair, may I suggest that National Grid meet with the neighbors and have a discussion and be able to answer the questions they have before you proceed and then come back to us?
I think that's an excellent suggestion, Council Frida. So what I would encourage National Grid to do is to meet with all of the abutters, including Mr. Finley, Ms. Curran, and Steve. I don't know Steve's last name at number 5. But I would encourage, I think that's the way to do it, because I have questions, but I think the neighbors really can walk you around the property and try to show you what their real concerns are.
We have some big circles with orange X's on it.
Mhm.
And I go, what is this? Well, what we just went through with all the gas pipelines,
Mhm.
we, for the last few weeks or month, or we just don't know what's going on. And if you go try to ask people, they don't talk to you about it. Yeah, it's very,
Yeah, that's frustrating.
it's kind of, yeah, we don't know what's going on.
I'll give you my map.
Oh, thanks.
To take as a reference. So is that something that you can do, Mr. Macy? I can set up a meeting with the,
I do think it's a
The
good idea.
abutters.
Yeah, I could set up a meeting, although I don't know how this will change the conclusion of this poll hearing. That is also why we are all here at a public hearing, is to have these discussions.
Sure, no, absolutely.
And so,
I think it would be helpful to walk the neighbor's property and really show them where these things are going, especially Mr. Finley's. He's going to have a new pole, which is non-existing. He's going to have a guy wire or some kind of anchoring wire, there as well. And I think that's important for him to understand very clearly and specifically, and the other neighbors as well. I'm not comfortable, I'll just speak for myself. I certainly am not comfortable. I wouldn't be recommending that we support this tonight. I think there are too many questions. And my bottom line question is, if the technology keeps changing and improving, which I imagine it is, and it's getting heavier, then the support poles that technology, that equipment is on, that needs to keep pace with the increased load of the technology. I think adding poles in places where they don't exist is just, I think it's unsightly. I don't think it's necessary. I think, you need to make poles that will support whatever you need to put on them. So I guess 2 things. I guess, you have a few questions to take back to National Grid. I think we have some questions for our DPW. And then if you can, what we will do is keep this public hearing open until our next meeting. And then maybe you can come down with those answers, along with some feedback from the neighbors after you've had a chance to meet with them. That makes sense?
That makes sense. I just
Okay.
also want to make note that, a work request like this is very important, not only as the company's side, but also the customers in Leominster as well, this reconductoring for these feeders. It's getting upgraded. It's being upgraded. I also like to note that addresses 5 Maple Ave and 9 Maple Ave, what they're experiencing with the poles leaning right now is a perfect example of what I've been mentioning, and the importance of these stub poles and anchors that we have brought forth the past 2 work requests.
Mhm.
As she has mentioned, it is a safety concern, and it's something that we try to address. We're trying to address in the easiest, best solution.
Solution certainly is what I'm after. So if, as the counselor across from me, the Ward 5 counselor, I think said something earlier about, can you put a double pole there? We're not a fan of double poles. We've made that really clear. But if you can put a double pole next to a pole that exists to shore that up so that it will hold whatever capacity is, rather than put a new one in across the street, I'm all for that. So we're looking for the best solution. Counselor, did you have something to say?
Sure. I think those plans, it would, as people have, the unknown is, that's been my sort of experience.
Well, I would disagree that there's much unknown. Our field engineers do put stakes in the ground. Everyone does get a butters notice, and I understand maybe some sketches could get better, which I understand, and I can bring that back and speak of. But everyone does get notified. We send
They
out
do.
butters
They
notice.
get notified, but
Stakes in the ground.
there's
There's
stakes.
sketches.
There's
We have these conversations here.
no drawing that's like an elevation. That's what I'm really looking for, is like an elevation. When you see, the side of a building, or you see some other kind of schematic, that's what I'm looking for. Here's the pole, this is the way the guy wire is going. And 5 feet, however many feet. I mean, that's what I'm interested in, is more specific information. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and, you've got a lot of questions to bring back. Counselor Ardinger.
I'm sorry, I'm just looking for a bit of clarification. Counselor from Ward 5 had asked before about the guy wire. So I understand you're talking about 17-foot wire coming down 5 feet behind the pole, right? That's at a triangle. Now, he asked if you could approximately, if you could take it like this and then come straight down.
Mhm.
I've seen those configurations.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is that something you were going to ask about?
I will. That might even be part of this design. I just don't have that information at hand right now.
That
I don't
would
know
be-
the details
That would, I
specifically.
think, address some of the abutters question about the kids walking on his lawn. So
Thank
that's clarification. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Counselor. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, well, look, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Is there anybody else? I'm going to go for a third time. Anybody else in the audience who would speak in support or opposition, excuse me, to 6-24? For the last time, anybody else want to speak? And with that, Madam Chair, I will keep this public hearing open. Oh, sorry, City
And-
Clerk, I'll keep it open and reschedule the next public hearing.
October 10th at 6:25 PM.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much. Also, while I was removed from the meeting and sitting in the audience, I was getting a few text messages from people that are watching our meeting. It's very important that you speak directly into these microphones, that they're not very sensitive. And if you notice in our regular chambers, we have those microphones that sit around on our desks. They pick up our voice as well, in case we're not talking directly into the mic or if it's not on. So we don't have that here. These are not the best mics. So there's some counselors that people are telling me they can't hear anything at all. So you need to speak directly into your microphone or the public is not hearing anything you're saying. Okay, so we are now going to hold the public forum. The public forum is an opportunity for any member of the audience to speak on any matter specifically listed on the council agenda. Speakers will be asked to come to the microphone and state their formal name and address along with identifying the specific item or items they wish to address. Each speaker is respectfully asked to keep their comments within a 2-minute time frame. The council will not be responding to or answering any questions. However, at this discretion of the council president, clarification may be given. Nobody has formally signed up, so I will ask, would anybody in the audience like to speak to the public forum? Once again, would anybody in the audience like to speak to the public forum? And for the third and final time, would anybody in the audience like to speak to the public forum? Seeing none, I declare the public forum closed, and we are going to be back in session. We are going to move right into, there are currently no communications from the mayor, so we are going to move to petitions. First time on the calendar, Madam Clerk.
13-24, Mark C. Bedanza, Ward 4 Councilor, request to amend Chapter 13 of the revised ordinance, Section 13-75, entitled Speed Limits, Specific Streets, by inserting Low Street in its entirety at 25 miles per hour.
And 13-24 is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the calendar, regular course. Let's have a public schedule for October 10th, 2023 at 6:40 p.m. I did see Sergeant Shot it already.
Sergeant Robichaud has already started to do a speed study at Low Street because he realized this was occurring and he knew it would take a little bit of time to complete. So he should have that back by our next meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Okay, so 13-24 is given regular course, and we need to establish a public hearing for October 10th, 2023 at 6:40 p.m. All those in favor of establishing that public hearing signify in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 9-0, that public hearing has been established. Moving on to matters before the City Council. Does the Chairman of Finance have a financial report?
I do. Thank you, Mr. President. We began the fiscal year on July 1st with a balance in the stabilization account of $21,608,209. During the course of the fiscal year, we added interest of $40,012 for a new balance of $21,648,221. Last meeting, we approved $750,000 related to the storm of September 11. Subtracting that from the balance leaves $20,898,221, and that's the financial report.
Okay, are there any questions or comments on the financial report? Seeing none, we will move right into items under finance, beginning with 3-24. Mr. Chairman, are you ready to report?
Thank you, Mr. President. 3-24, Claire Frieda, Councilor at Large, prohibit the city of Leominster from retaining any equity remaining on a taxpayer's property after all municipal tax liability, incurred fees, and charges have been satisfied after a foreclosure auction. If a property is sold after the city's liability has been met, all equity shall be returned to the property owner. Also, that the city shall not engage with any third party that would participate in the practice of equity theft. We had a subcommittee meeting earlier, Mr. President, on this particular petition. As a result, the Finance Subcommittee recommendation is for further time.
Okay, so you've heard the recommendation of the Finance Committee to give 3-24 further time. Is there any discussion? Councilor Frieda.
I agree with further time. And I am going to talk today with a plan. I think this is extremely important that we send a message to our community that we're not going to allow anybody to take their property in this city. This is dangerous. It's happening in way too many communities. There isn't a tax collector that would ever sit there and tell you this is a good idea, because their job is to get as much revenue into the city as they can get. So, I mean, that's not anything to do with anybody's character. That's just the name of that's just how it goes. That's what municipalities do. I will talk to David about maybe changing some wording that's more acceptable. And I know further time in the subcommittee meeting was to get more information from the city solicitor to clarify But I'm a little disappointed that August 14th, this was on the agenda. And it shouldn't take till tonight to find out that it's not clear. Should have asked the question ahead of time and said, what do you exactly mean by this? So, I mean, good that we're going to get it clarified, and by the next meeting, I will talk to David LaPlante and see if we can do something about changing it so that we can support this for our community.
Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion, Councilor Bedanza?
Yeah, we obviously had a lengthy subcommittee meeting. I don't want to belabor the points, but the lapse of time really has a lot to do with the getting the opinion from City Solicitor Riley, which took some time, as well as David LaPlante's schedule. That's the soonest we could do it. So we had to accommodate. He has the most knowledge of anybody really in the city, and we really wanted him present for this meeting. So apologize for how much time this has taken, Councilor, but those are the reasons.
Through the chair?
Sure,
I
Councilor
wasn't
Frida.
complaining about the time. I was just suggesting that the city solicitor could have had an answer back before 6-8 weeks, whatever it is. That's the point I was making. No, I understand David LaPlante's schedule and my schedule. So between the two, I understand that.
As you know, we just got the city solicitor's opinion today.
All right. Is there any other discussion on 3-24? Seeing none, all those in favor of giving 3-24 further time signify in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, 3-24 has been given further time. We now have 3 items that are in need of ratification that were passed at the last meeting for obvious purposes as an emergency preamble. The first being C-12. Mr. Chairman of Finance, are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, C-12, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, requested an appropriation of $500,000 be made to the flood fund, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. As you indicated, this was passed at the last meeting by emergency preamble because it affected the health and safety of our residents. And our charter requires a ratification vote. It'd be my position, Mr. President, to ratify C-12. I'd ask you to check with members of my committee.
Councilor Cormier?
I agree.
Councilor Angelini? Okay, you've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee to ratify C-12. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of ratifying C-12 signify in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, C-12 has been ratified. Moving on to C-13.
C-13, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, requested an appropriation of $250,000 be made to the Police Department overtime account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Once again, pursuant to the charter, we need to ratify this. It would be my position, Mr. President, to ratify C-13, and I'd ask you to check with members of my committee.
Councilor Cormier?
I agree.
Councilor Angelini? Okay, you've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee to ratify C-13. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of ratifying C-13 signify in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, C-13 has been ratified. C-14, Mr. Chairman.
C-14, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, request for a vote to approve the adoption of an emergency storm relief fund. Donations to the emergency storm relief fund will be accepted in 3 forms: cash, check, and online donation made through an account created on behalf of the City of Leominster by the United Way of North Central Massachusetts. These donations will be distributed to the impacted residents of the City of Leominster on a case-by-case basis. The list of residents in need continues to grow, and information is being collected by the Mayor's office. Once again, this needs to be ratified because it was passed as an emergency preamble. Happy to report that one of our local companies, AIS, has already created a donation of $40,000 towards this fund. Be my position, Mr. President, to grant C-14. I'd ask you to check with members of my committee.
Councilor Cormier?
I agree.
Councilor Angelini? Okay, as you've heard the unanimous recommendation to ratify C-14, is there any discussion? And I will note, I think I saw Ron Bouchard's as well, $50,000. So people have been very generous, and you know, this is good news for everybody that's affected. It certainly is a good start. I'm sure that there'll be more to come. So seeing no other discussion, all those in favor of ratifying C-14 signify in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, C-14 has been ratified. On 5-24 and 6-24, I am required to abstain because both of these items pertain to or partially owned by my employer. So I'm going to ask the Vice President, Councilor Comey, to take over the chair for a minute, and I will step out and I'll be back for 9-24.
Thank you, Mr. President. 5-24 to the Chairwoman of Public Service, Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. 5-24, this is Massachusetts Electric Company, DBA National Grid, proposing one jointly owned pole on Mechanic Street beginning approximately 130 feet east of the center line of the intersection of Johnny Appleseed Lane. So we had a public hearing earlier this evening on petition 5-24, and based on a number of questions that were raised, including the Ward 2 councilors' questions regarding the appropriateness of the pole and how it will fit into some reconstruction of that intersection. My recommendation would be to give this further time, and I would ask that you poll my committee.
Councilor Frida? Councilor Brady?
I agree.
So it's the unanimous recommendation of the Public Service Committee to leave the public hearing open. And I believe we need to vote to.
We do. We need to vote for the time and then establish the public
Okay.
hearing. Right. So we'll vote. and then
So all
establish
those
the
in
public-
favor of granting 5-24 further time, please signify in the usual manner by a vote of 8-0. 5-24 has been given further time. And Madam Clerk, do we have the date and time for the continuation?
October 10th, 2023 at 6:35 PM here at Appleseed Restaurant, 122 Granite Street, Leominster, Mass.
And all those in favor of establishing that hearing time, please signify in the usual manner by a vote of 8-0. That has been granted. Madam Chairwoman, 6-24.
6-24, Massachusetts Electric Company, DBA National Grid and Verizon New England, Inc. are requesting to install a new jointly owned pole on Maple Avenue beginning at a point approximately 200 feet north of the center line of the intersection of Maple Avenue and West Street. So we had a public hearing earlier this evening on this petition, and there were numerous questions raised by the abutters, as well as some concerns raised by the Ward 5 councilor and myself. So my recommendation at this point would be to give 6-24 further time, and I ask that you poll my committee.
Councilor Frida? And Councilor Brady?
I'm in agreement.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Public Service Committee to give 6-24 further time. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify in the usual manner. By a vote of 8-0, 6-24 has been given further time. And we're looking to establish a hearing date on 10/10/2023. And Madam Clerk, at what time?
6:25 PM.
At 6:25 PM. All those in favor of continuing the public hearing to 10/10/23 at 6:25, please signify in the usual manner. By a vote of 8-0, that public hearing has been established. Madam Chairwoman, 9-24.
Yes, 9-24, Massachusetts Electric Company, DBA National Grid, request permission to locate poles, wires, fixtures, and to install a solely owned pole on West Street beginning at a point approximately 50 feet northwest of center line of the intersection of West Street and University Street. Again, we had a public hearing earlier this evening, and there were other questions raised about this petition specifically. So my recommendation would be for further time, and I would ask that you poll my committee, please.
Councilor Frida?
I'm back.
Oh, sorry.
I can participate in this one. Yeah.
Oh, good. No. Oh,
Councilor Frida, you're all set for the time. Councilor Brady?
I'm fine with it.
Okay, so you've heard the recommendation of the Public Service Committee to give further time to 9-24, and we need to establish a public hearing as well. First, I think the clerk is saying 6:30 PM on October 10th, 2023. All those in favor of giving this further time and establishing that public hearing signify in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, further time has been given and the public hearing is set for 6:30 PM on October 10th, 2023. 11-24, Madam Chairwoman, you ready to report?
I am. Massachusetts Electric Company, DBA National Grid of North Andover, Massachusetts, that it desires to construct a line of underground electric conduits, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures under and across the public way or ways hereinafter named. Wherefore, it prays that after due notice and hearing as provided by law, it be granted permission to excavate the public highways and to run and maintain underground electric conduits, together with such sustaining and protecting fixtures as it may find necessary for the transmission of electricity. Said underground conduits to be located substantially in accordance with the plan filed herewith marked Church Street and West Street, Leominster, Massachusetts. The following are the streets and highways referred to. Plan number 30552233, Church Street and West Street. Mr. Chair, Mr. President, we have a public hearing scheduled on this petition for October 10th, 2023 at 6:50 PM. So my recommendation would be further time, and I ask that you poll my committee.
Council Frida? Council Brady?
Yes.
Okay, so you've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Public Service Committee to give 11-24 further time and establish a public hearing for October 10th, 2023 at 6:50 PM. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of giving this further time and establishing the public hearing for 6:50 PM on October 10th, 2023 signify in usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, that public hearing has been established and this has been given further time. Moving on to 12-24.
12-24, Massachusetts Electric Company, DBA National Grid, requests permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way. West Street, National Grid to install one solely owned pole on West Street, beginning at a point approximately 145 feet east of the center line of the intersection of School Street and continuing approximately 18 feet in a north direction. Install one new pole approximately 18 feet. Install new duct bank approximately 120 feet from MI-122 to pole number 1 and new pole 2-1. Wherefore, it prays that after due notice and hearings as provided by law, it be granted a location for and permission to erect and maintain poles and wires, together with such sustaining and protecting fixtures as it may find necessary. Said poles to be erected substantially in accordance with the plan filed herewith marked West Street, Leominster, Massachusetts, number 30552208, September 11th, 2023. Your petitioner agrees to reserve space for one cross arm at a suitable point on each of said poles for the fire, police, telephone, and telegraph signal wires belonging to the municipality and used by it exclusively for municipal purposes. This petition, we have a public hearing scheduled for October 10th, 2023 at 6:51 PM. So I would ask you to poll my committee. My recommendation would be further time.
Council Frida? Council Brady?
I agree.
Okay, you've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Public Service Committee to give 12-24 further time and to establish a public hearing for October 10th, 2023 at 6:51 PM. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of giving 12-24 further time and establishing the public hearing for October 10th, 2023 at 6:51 PM, please signify in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, this has been given further time and the public hearing has been established. Moving on to items under legal affairs, 7-24. Mr. Chairman, are you ready to report?
Sergeant Robichaud here early this evening, and one issue that needs some clarification: where exactly, precisely in City Hall, parking permits could be obtained. So he was going to amend that and come back. I would suggest that we leave the public, left the public open. I would ask for further time on that and
6:40 PM, she's indicated to me, on October 10th.
6:40. Thank you.
Let me check with your committee for the time. Councilor
Okay.
Fianza, Councilor Cormier. I'm sorry,
Deacon.
Councilor Deacon, I'm sorry. Okay, so,
I would have
so you've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Legal Affairs Committee to give 7-24 further time and establish a public hearing at 6:40 PM on October 10th, 2023. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of giving further time and establishing that public hearing signify in usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, further time has been given and that public hearing for 6:40 PM on October 10th has been established. Moving on to 8-24.
Thank you, Mr. President. 8-24. Had a public hearing on this as well tonight. We closed the public hearing, and it would be certainly my position that we accept the proposed ordinance changes. And I would ask you to check with members of my committee.
Councilor Bedanza
Yes, I'm for granting it.
and Councilor Deacon.
Okay with it.
Okay, so you've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Legal Affairs Committee to grant 8-24. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of granting 8-24 signify in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, 8-24 has been granted. Moving on to 10-24.
Dash 24. Susan Shalifo Zephyr, Council at Large, requests to amend Chapter 7 entitled Electricity, Section 7-5, Placement of Streetlights over public ways. Paragraph A as follows. Any person or company desiring to construct a line, wire, pole, or conduit utilized for transmission of electricity shall, in writing, petition the City Council to install said apparatus and wire dedicated to the illumination of a public way. Public hearing shall be held on the petition, and written notice of the time and place of the hearing, along with a copy of the proposed plan, shall be mailed at least 7 days prior thereto by the clerk of the city to all owners of real estate abutting the part of the way upon, along, across, or under which the line is said to be constructed, as such ownership is determined by the last preceding assessment for taxation. After said public hearing, the City Council may, by order, grant to the petitioner a location for such line specifically therein, where the poles, piers, abutments, and conduits may be placed. And in respect to overhead lines, may also specify the kind of poles, piers, or abutments which may be used, the number of wires or cables which may be attached thereto, and the height to which the wires or cables may run. Mr. Chairman, I would ask for further, Mr. President, I would ask for further time on this. We do have a public hearing scheduled for October 10th at 6:45 PM. Now I would ask you to check with members of my committee.
And Councilor Bedanza,
I'm okay with it.
Councilor Deacon. Okay, so you've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Legal Affairs Committee to give further time to 10-24. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of giving further time for 10-24 signify in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, 10-24 has been given further time. Is there any new business to come before the City Council? Councilor Brady.
Yeah, and I'm going to speak in regards to legal opinions coming from KP Law. I requested in the past that we all get copied off of any opinion, and that's still not happening.
Which one are you?
I'm referring to Brian Riley's letter that I received today.
Oh, yeah, we all received that today. That was just sent.
All right, well, no, we all didn't. I got a copy of it. Everyone else was emailed. I'm just saying, why don't we distribute it to the entire council? So we don't get selective information.
So I only printed a copy for everybody because it came in last minute today and I wasn't aware if you'd make it in time to see it in your email. So I can re-forward it through email tonight as well. but my thought process on it was just that you would receive it faster in a more timely manner.
Going forward, can we get copies of these opinions?
I think you're right. I think that email was limited. I don't think it went to the entire council.
It didn't.
No, and I printed it. 'Cause when Brian Riley responded, he responded to myself to remind him for the opinion, and then Counselor Bedanza. And then I printed it for tonight because I wasn't
Right.
aware it could be.
Forward, and all communications get forwarded to every member of the city council.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other new business to come before?
Just out of curiosity, the counselor across from me brings up a good point. I think the opinion came back to Maribel, President, and Nicole LaPlante. Why would it go, this is an opinion we were requesting as the city council, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Why would it go to the city, the treasurer and then not come to the rest of the council?
I wouldn't have known about it if I didn't call.
Somebody must have prompted Brian Riley to send it to the comptroller unless they requested it as well.
I don't know why
the,
he did
treasurer.
because my original was just directly to Brian. And then my reminder today was also just directly to Brian, but I copied the finance chair to show him that I was reminding him. So I do not know why Attorney Riley copied Nicole LaPlante on it.
Okay, is there any other new business? Seeing none, old business. We had a request. Elizabeth Wood, the planning director. She's looking for two councilors to serve on a housing committee. I'm just going to very quickly describe. The housing committee has been formed because the mayor requested my department to address the housing crisis we are experiencing here in Leominster and statewide. We are looking for solutions as to how to provide more housing options to all types of buyers, market rate, first-time home buyers, senior housing, affordable, etc. I'm attaching the agenda from the first meeting and the meeting minutes so you can get an idea of what was discussed at the first meeting. The next step is to examine our zoning ordinances and determine what changes can be made to facilitate the development of more housing. The next meeting is Thursday, September 28th at 10 a.m. at the Leominster Public Library. Thank you for finding us some members for the council to serve. They are an integral part of this. So I don't know if anybody has any interest. Councilor Frida?
I spoke to John Souza, see how time consuming it would be. So I understood he was chairing it so I did agree to serve.
Okay. All right. And if there anyone else that wants to serve, you can send an email to me and CC the city clerk if you would. I know that the meetings are generally going to be, I think, on a Thursday at 10 a.m. So, you know, your schedule would have to allot for that. There is going to be a meeting this coming Thursday. So if anybody wants to go, they can reserve it and, you know, let me know. They're looking for 2 members. So I don't see anybody pounding my door down. So if anybody wants to think about this and let me know as soon as possible, that'd be great.
Do we have the agenda of the minutes of the last meeting? Because I don't have it, I don't think.
I have them somewhere here. This is it. Okay, and any other old business to come before the city council? Yeah, everybody has to clean off their desks at our regular city council chambers. The deadline is September 30th, or the city clerk is going to have to pack everything up for you and put it in boxes because fortunately they're going to be starting the work down there very soon, so that we can get back into where we belong as soon as possible. Any other old business? Community calendar, the Oak Hill Solar Field. Does anybody have any additional information? That's Councilor Angelini.
Afternoon, a text and I haven't heard back.
Okay.
So, but I am reaching out, so hopefully we'll have an update to the council at our next meeting.
Okay, we'll continue to monitor that situation. Also, I could be wrong, but I think I saw the mayor of Fitchburg post something about a meeting going on up in Fitchburg tomorrow night about that as well. Don't quote me, but if you want to check Fitchburg's. Oh, is it a neighborhood? Okay, there's something going on. So I know this is still going on. We'll continue to monitor it and, see from our end, where we stand. Anybody else have any comment on it? Seeing none, anything else under the community calendar? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councilor Shalfo Zephyr, seconded by Councilor Angelini. All those in favor of adjournment signify in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 9-0. We are now adjourned. Thank you all very much.
The Leominster City Council meeting is funded in part by the Carolus Insurance Agency at www.thecarolusinsuranceagency.com and by Avidia Bank at www.avidiabank.com.